Welcome to Employee Termination Tips. My name is Christopher Neufeld of Neufeld Legal. And in this particular video, we're going to be discussing that when you quit your job, does your former boss owe you money or not? And it's really a maybe, maybe not question, which is so heavily dependent upon legalities that for the most part, I believe most people don't even get into it. Most people don't look at it because they think they'll do a preliminary review and they'll see that if you quit your job, you're not entitled to termination pay in lieu of notice, you're not entitled to severance pay. And unless there's some horrendous condition which gave rise to a claim of constructive dismissal, wrongful dismissal, or abuse in the office place, or some other human rights or personal rights issue, you're probably not due anything from your former employer. But that's taking a far too simplistic view of things. And the reason for this particular oversight in not addressing this aspect is the fact that far too many employees, along with their employers, are looking at payroll and employee pay through the lens of a singular view of how payroll is calculated. And because of that, nobody really puts the time and effort into seeing whether or not there might be back pay that is due to that individual. And back pay remains due to somebody even when they quit their job. Yes, they can lose the potential for back pay if they sign a written release. Yes, the employer feels emboldened when somebody quits that they might not be due any further money, that they've accepted all the pay that's come to them. However, depending upon the way the law has been applied, both in the jurisdiction and to the employment situation, there is a possibility, and it's not a very slim possibility, really depending upon what the laws are. It could be a substantial possibility that you, as an employee who's quitting their job, may well still have back pay that's due to them. And this back pay can be in the tens of thousands of dollars, can even be in excess of $100,000. But it's money that you've earned, and it's just been improperly calculated and not paid to you because of the employer not processing payroll in accordance with the laws of the jurisdiction within which you are employed. And this is a striking phenomenon which people don't readily recognize because people don't look at payroll to the degree that they should be. Even though payroll is one of the largest components of most employers' pay arrangements and costs, they don't take the sufficient time to determine if they're underpaying or failing to pay employees in certain aspects. And instead, what they have all too often done is they take on payroll processes, payroll training of their payroll staff, and utilize payroll software that is of general application, but is not necessarily specific to the jurisdiction within which their employees are working. And this causes serious issues. Because if you're applying the wrong set of laws, and especially if those wrong set of laws are far more lenient as to what the pay requirements are to employees within a particular jurisdiction, be it the wrong province, the wrong state, even the wrong country, you have some serious issues with respect to pay arrangements. And depending on how the laws work, the amount that can be recollected from your former employer, even when you quit your job, it's not simply when you get fired, when you get terminated, when you're laid off, it's when you even quit your job, that might still be due and owing to yourself. Because this is money that is legally owed to the employee. It was required to be paid to the employee by the employer, but for the failure of the employer to follow the laws that are governing the employment relationship and the termination of payroll. Because in some places, payroll can be very difficult to calculate, very tedious, and unfortunately, payroll specialists and the lawyers do not work through this stuff adequately. They don't create the right systems, they use the wrong systems, and in turn, they pay people improperly. And when people are paid improperly, it's typically because they're underpaid. They're not paid for certain aspects. And this is money that is due and remains due depending upon the laws of the jurisdiction. How much can be collected is always a question. But it is something that you should be looking into. Hopefully before you quit your job and you sign away too much stuff, or even when you immediately quit your job and you say, oh, what should I be doing about this? Should I be looking into it? You need to be engaging with legal counsel, a lawyer that understands the payroll laws of your specific jurisdiction within which you are working, and can go through the materials that you have or can get that are available to yourself with respect to your pay to make sure that you are fully paid. And if you weren't fully paid, to properly address that with your former boss and say, look, I worked, I earned this money, and you miscalculated the money. And now I'm due the money. And now I want the money that I worked for previously paid to myself. And why is that the case? Because you earned it. And because the law requires it to be paid. So simply because you've quit your job or in the process of going to look to quit your job, it doesn't mean that you aren't owed money from your employer. There can be substantial money that's due to yourself. And you got to address this properly. It's money that you've earned. It's money that's legally due to yourself. And if that is the case, you should be dealing with it appropriately because it's your money and not your former employer's money. And that's what you have to be looking at. Thank you.